Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Hello, and welcome to Cahnmanns Current Events Roundtable. Today, we have a very interesting guest. In fact, I have a guest that I'm welcoming back, right, Richard?
I believe so.
He's a marvelous lecturer and author and a great guest. And we're going to be talking about the politics of dysfunction. And there's so many politics of dysfunction. We're going to go from Illinois all the way to Washington, D.C.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. And I just want to tell you that you've worked for many years in the government, state, county, and three mayors?
Chicago mayors.
Three
yes.
Chicago mayors.
Yeah, so Mayor Byrne, I came in with the Byrne administration, some of the Washington administration, and I came back with Richard M. Daley.
Okay, so great. So I should ask you, how did you like all of them? Or you never ask somebody that does consulting.
They all had their individual unique styles.
And so, that was our first female
First
mayor,
woman,
too.
yeah. Very
Yes.
underrated mayor.
Yes,
Mayor
yes.
Byrne.
She finally got a street named after her after how many years?
She got the roundabout, I think they used to call it the Spaghetti Bowl, where the Eisenhower meets the Kennedy. I think they named that after her.
I see.
The Byrne interchange.
The Byrne interchange. Well, at least she got something. But I came across a column that about Illinois politics just recently from the Chicago Tribune with John Cass. And I just wanted to quote him a little bit on Illinois, because he compares Illinois to Venezuela, because it's a fiscally broken state that has lost its will to live, although the moment we still have, and he writes enough toilet paper, which is very interesting. And he thinks that we should dissolve and we should tear up the charter, make it 49 states, and each part of our state, part will go to Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, and parts to Kentucky. And he even states that, that we would call the teams, the Milwaukee Cubs, the Beloit Blackhawks, the Sheboygan Bulls, Fond du Lac Bears, and in Indianapolis White Sox. And everybody gets a piece of it, but not too many people want it run a manual. They just wanted to buy the United Illinois, or they're calling parts of it would be the 49 states. It'll go back to 49 states. And what do you think about it? What's going on with our state of Illinois, and why it's struggling to create a new budget to solve the financial crisis?
Well, Illinois right now, we're speaking, we still don't have a budget right now. We're in late June, and we have not had a budget since Rauner has been governor, which is in January of 2017.
17. And is it Rauner?
I'm sorry, 2000, when was it? 2015.
Okay, he was
So we haven't had a budget in 2.5 years.
Now, he's trying to get through a budget, isn't he?
Yeah, and there's an impasse. So there's an impasse with Speaker Madigan and the Senate Leader Cullerton.
Okay.
Mostly the difficulty seems to be with Madigan, who's been in control of the House for so many years. Two strong personalities. Bruce Rauner is an extremely strong individual, a man who's made a fortune. He's used to getting his own way. Michael Madigan has been used to getting his own way in politics. So you have these two people who are not used to compromising. If they're getting their own way, and they're in a situation that nobody is giving into each other.
Didn't they read The Art of the Deal by, Donald Trump?
I guess that. Well, they have different agendas, and something like term limits. You imagine Michael Madigan, who's been in Springfield for 30 years right now. If you're talking about term limits, you're talking about basically, forced retirement for some people. So that's where there's been a lot of intransigence.
And then Durbin, how long has Senator Durbin been in politics?
Yeah, well, he's been, after he took the Paul Simon seat, since the early 90s.
Now, our forefathers, our founders, they weren't supposed to be in, when they took their Senate position or state rep position, our representative in the Congress, they were supposed to be there for
when Abraham Lincoln was first elected to Congress from Illinois, I believe it was at 1842, he had one term. He could only serve one term.
Right, because our founders thought that they would go in for a year,
right,
and most 2 years, and then they would return to their jobs, because I don't know if they were getting that much pay as a congressperson in those days.
Yeah, and it was the idea. It was
an honor, more
well,
or
it was
less.
The idea of being a representative of the people.
Right.
Okay, rather than just creating a whole separate new class. The political class.
Right, and these people have been in, this is the problem, and I think if you're right, if we have term limits, we'll have a senator in there, and even for the presidency, maybe a term limit for 6 years, and then they don't have to be running for office again, and they don't have to worry about running.
Well, there's a two-term limit for the presidency. That was a constitutional amendment.
Right.
Okay. But you're saying have a 6-year one-term limit.
One term. Yeah. They don't have to go and try to dig up votes again and run around. And whenever you start looking for votes and money and raising money, you're not really watching the store.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you're elected to Congress, the U.S. Congress, you get elected, and then you're running again in 2 years. Mm-hmm. So that means you're continually raising funds, and sometimes the interest of the people who give you the funds take precedence over the public good or your constituents' needs.
Yeah, because you won't be in that position without
because
their
you're
money.
beholden to
Exactly. So if there were term limits, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah, and at least on the state level, the presidency is the only federal term limit, but with state governments, Illinois does not have term limits. Rauner is trying to push a term limit. But if you look at some of our border states, for instance, Ohio has Indiana, Ohio, those are term-limited states. I believe Wisconsin now, and the Wisconsin legislature has term limits.
See, maybe it would be good that we divide Illinois and go into those states, and they're doing that well. What's going on in our state? I know that Governor Rauner's proposal is property tax relief, as you said, term limits, and spending caps.
And workers' compensation reform. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing, too.
I think we talked about, when we went to lunch at the Bluegrass today, we talked about something that I thought was very important, that that these people, they're not working together. And I think you mentioned that everybody is on their own practically. The Democrats aren't working with the Republicans, and the Republicans aren't working with the Democrats, and everybody seems to be on the side working for just their own party instead of, you mentioned something about LBJ. We talked about.
We were talking. LBJ, was a great politician. He could work across the aisle with the Republicans. But I think we were talking about earlier about Reagan and about immigration reform. So in 1986, there was a massive immigration law passed. It was known as the Amnesty Program, or the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. And Reagan was the president, and both houses of Congress were controlled by Republicans. Tip O'Neill was the head of the House. And Tip O'Neill and Reagan were personal friends. They used to play poker.
Now, Tip O'Neill was a Democrat.
Yeah, Boston Democrat. And Tip O'Neill encouraged his members in the House and across to the Senate to let's cooperate with the president in getting some immigration reform done. And it happened. This was bipartisanship. I was recently in Springfield, and I remember my first time going to Springfield in the mid-'70s, and you just saw the civility between Republicans and Democrats. Usually you would see it after hours at the lounge at the Abraham Lincoln Hotel, where people were talking to each other. And Republicans and Democrats were friends. They socialized together.
Right.
And they were congenial.
And they were on the golf course together.
They were on the golf course, yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is what's happening in our politics, that everybody, is on their own. They won't get together anymore. Why? Why are they not doing that?
Well, yeah, I'm looking, we were talking too about just listening to each other. So Fareed Zakaria, who, as we know, is a liberal commentator. I think he's on CNN. And he says, Zakaria says that the only way you can learn is by being open to listening to people with opposing views and coming together in conversation. And I think what's happening, certainly on the political level, is nobody's listening to each other. Everybody has their own ideology, their own set of values. There's no willingness to bend, to compromise. That's what you're supposed to do in politics.
Exactly.
Is you don't get the full loaf, you get maybe a half a loaf, the other part gets half a loaf, you put that together, you get a full loaf. Not everybody's going to be completely satisfied, but at least it results in policy that everybody can live. It's not getting your whole everything you want, but it's getting some of what you want.
And I think it started when President Obama, he started his health care bill, and I don't think he had many Republicans. He included very many Republicans when he started the Affordable Care Act.
None. He had none Republicans, and now the Republicans have no Democrats.
Exactly. And see, and by doing that, by both of them doing that, you're never going to get a good health care bill, because you need the input of both parties.
Right.
Because it's like tit for tat, and they've been doing that, and they didn't do that. I don't remember in the Kennedy administration. They didn't even as far back as Kennedy, Clinton. I mean, he was good. He used to the word schmooze. He knew Kennedy.
Bill Clinton.
Bill Clinton.
Wonderful schmoozer.
Was the top schmoozer.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he schmoozed a little bit too much when he went on the tarmac to talk to Loretta Lynch.
Right. But he knew how to get people together.
Yes.
To get his point of view together. And and we have not had a president like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they try, but it's been very bad, and we've never had all this time. I mean, I know they made fun of Bush. I know somewhat. The Democrats made fun of Bush, and a lot of Obama's policies couldn't go through, but they never treated a president like they've treated Donald Trump. I mean, even if you can't stand him or you don't like his policies, at least, okay, I don't like his policies, but not to, I mean, you're seeing beheading, people holding the commentator, the comic holding, the head, Kathy Griffin.
It's not respecting the office.
And Johnny Depp saying he's going to, like to shoot the president or what have you. And the recent play, Shakespeare play, showing Trump and being assassinated. What is happening? I remember when I had this show, and I've done current events, and anybody would talk about, even if President Obama was not my choice, I would still say, hey, he's our president. We need to show him some respect. What is going on with the respect today of our politicians, especially Donald Trump? I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I think he's been dehumanized, and I think it probably goes back, in Trump's case, I think it went back to his, when he was advocating the birthing theory, the birther theory about Obama. And I think a lot of people said, that was a lie. that he's lying about a birth certificate of Obama from abroad.
But even if he was born in another country, his mother was American, so it would come out the same way.
Well, but he was born here.
Yeah, no, but I mean, if he wasn't,
Yeah.
and say he was born in another country, his mother was an American citizen,
Yeah.
so, that didn't make any sense to me. None of this made sense, but this is, this is what's going on, and our politics is getting worse
Right.
because of it, and nothing's going through.
I was hoping, to talk about. I think, there was so much pressure to do away with Obamacare, so it became a priority item to repeal Obamacare and come up with some new legislation.
Correct.
That became a top priority. I think it would have been wiser for Trump to throw out an infrastructure program where you're building highways, bridges, railroad tracks, things that can employ hundreds of thousands of Americans. This could be something that Republicans and Democrats could work together. Infrastructure.
Right, but I think he started with the Keystone Pipeline
Yeah.
that he approved, and then they're
Yeah,
supposed to
so
get jobs
and
that
the
way,
Democrats
too.
are opposing that. So rather than, I think it was a mistake strategically.
You mean to start off
To
with
start off,
that.
I would have, if I were advising Trump, I would have said, President Trump, let's start with an infrastructure program. Let's get people working again, because obviously, why do you think Trump?
Well, that was his number one thing,
And why do you think
too.
Trump won states like Wisconsin and Michigan, Pennsylvania, states that the Democrats hadn't won in years?
Because
he was promising jobs. And I think, how could the Democrats not go along and support something like that? I don't understand why he didn't push the infrastructure program.
Well, I think he is.
And well,
but
maybe
it's,
now he is. But I think that would have been a unifier, and he would have, it would have been right. And then you could talk about the health care, and you could talk about the tax structure and all that.
I also thought when President Obama was, with the health care, he should have just went with people with pre-existing conditions. And if he didn't do anything else of any health care and just talked about pre-existing conditions only, I think people would have been very happy with that, because both parties, being Republican, Democrat, Independent, all the parties, plus all the minor parties, everybody has either their spouses or their children or their grandparents having pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
So if they just started off
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
that would have been good. And on this one, they're repealing because a lot of the companies, a lot of the insurance companies
Right.
have dropped out, and that's a big concern. There's nothing, very
Yeah,
few
but
left.
I think what's important is let's get health care for the American people, and forget about the insurance companies. Do the insurance companies run this country?
Sounds like it. Yeah, probably they do.
Well, that's a
Yeah.
shame, because I think we could have everybody covered. A program like single payer,
Single payer.
or what they call Medicare expansion, because certain people of a certain age,
Yeah.
get Medicare, and pretty much
Medicare for all. You're
Medicare
talking about.
Medicare for all, and
it's
let
a
it
good
be
program.
let it be paid for just like we get Medicare paid for through a payroll deduction. And
Yeah.
that would help employers too, because so many employers are being strangled now by paying such high premiums for their employees. So it gets health care off of the employers' backs. So, they can save some money, and they don't have to worry. They don't have to be the ones that are taking care
Right,
of the
because
people
I was
paying
in
for it.
Mexico recently, and I was seen by an orthopedic surgeon, spent 1 hour with me, charged me $30.
$30.
$30. And I also take travel insurance, so my $30 will be reimbursed. But it's a different system. And one of the things that Israel, Mexico, England, Canada, they have the private, you're talking about payer.
Yeah, single payer.
Single payer. But if you want, and you don't think, like in Canada, you may have to wait months, a long time to get,
Right.
say, an MRI or a CAT scan or one of those type of tests, but you could take out a private policy.
Right.
So you have an option of taking either being on the state, or you could take, and so the private policies that a lot of people do take out, because once you have a private policy and you want an MRI, you could have it within the same week or the next week.
I think even
So that's a good idea.
President Trump was, when he was talking to the Australian president
Yes.
A couple of months ago, he said, "Boy, you guys really have a good health system in your
Right,
country."
right.
And that's the kind of health system, single payer, comprehensive system. They have that in Australia. And don't forget, Donald Trump was more of a Democrat than a Republican. You know, he certainly started out as a Democrat, and he
His family was they were all
contributed
Democrats,
money
yeah.
to the Democratic Party. Boy, he contributed money to Mayor Emanuel. You know that, you know.
Really?
Well,
so you know that, so I don't know.
Yeah,
how to-
well,
Yeah.
yeah. All you have to do is look at, donations. So yeah, I think he had a debt, because the Republican legislators all made a promise to repeal Obamacare. I think they were kind of forcing that. Yes, let's repeal.
I think a single payer, and I think you're right. I think President Trump really does want a single payer, but he can't just come out because of,
Right.
He's working with the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But I think eventually, in fact, I was reading Charles Krauthammer's column, who also, is a Republican, and he said within a short time, maybe 6 years, maybe sooner, that we are going to have a single payer.
And I think
that would work
I,
the best.
I think that's gonna yes. I think that would be great.
So as we're talking about all these, dysfunction that's going on, how do you think Illinois is going to get itself out of this, and it doesn't go into bankruptcy, or it can't go into bankruptcy because there's a law in Illinois that states I know Detroit went into bankruptcy and they're doing pretty good now.
Well, there was a constitutional convention in Illinois in the early 70s, basically said that a right for a public employee, you cannot take something won in collective bargaining. You cannot take that right away. So under Governor Quinn and the legislature, they were trying to impose a new pension cap. So right now there's a 3% cost of living, let's say for North Suburban teachers, the Teachers Retirement Fund, and that was going to be capped at $750 a year. So if you're getting a pension of $100,000, that's like at least $3,000, $4,000 a year you're getting every year in a pension increment. It would have been capped at $750. So the idea was you have to keep those pension caps down. Well, the Supreme Court in Illinois said you can't do that because it's against the Constitution in Illinois.
So they want to change the Constitution.
Well, you would have the voters would have to vote for another constitutional convention in the state of Illinois.
A lot of people don't know that people that have pensions in Illinois, I know my husband worked for, he's an attorney with the Property Tax Division under Dick Devine, and, you cannot collect Social Security when you have a pension. A lot of people, they think, all these teachers and all these state employees, look at, they're getting big pensions, and they don't realize they do not get Social Security. And if they go to another job that does have Social Security after they're penalized.
They're penalized. There's the windfall. The windfall thing cuts they're about 35 or 40% of their Social Security check.
But a lot of people don't know this unless you're a teacher or work for the state of Illinois or the county. You don't realize that the people depend on their pensions, and I don't know how they're going to get their pension paid for if everything goes.
But now they're just talking about the politicians solving the pension problem in Illinois, but the politicians created the pension problem. I mean, the biggest problem was the politicians did not pay for many, many years money that was supposed to go into the pension fund. The politicians decided to use it for other sources. They would put it in for education. They would put it in for roads. The money they did that for several years, and it was a Republican governor. It was a Democratic governor. That's, we talk about dysfunctional government. It's just not one party. It's both parties contributed to that. Then you had double dipping in pension funds.
Oh, yeah,
so you would have a state legislature. Yeah.
You told me at our great lunch.
Yeah.
And you told me that they're double dipping, and I was like, What do you mean by double dipping? Tell people what you're.
Well, double
our
dipping.
viewers.
Double dipping is for instance, there was a senator. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was working many, many years in Springfield as a state senator, and he got the maximum as a state senator. So then he does some work for the Chicago public school system, and he gets into their pension fund. So by getting into their pension fund and working there, the law allowed him to work there. And even just by working there maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, he was able to get the maximum. So his pension went from $120,000 a year to $240,000 a year. So, and the fact that people would work, I think if you're a state legislator in Illinois, you work maybe 80 days a year. So a lot of people that have affiliations with the machine and Democratic machine in Chicago, they wound up working in the water department or transportation department.
And that's with Michael Madigan, right?
Yeah, and they would get
He's been there for how long?
So again, their pensions would be built up. So anyway, the politicians created the pension problem. So, and it's a shame that people like the teachers who put 9% of their funds into it, the teachers are being criticized. The ones who should be criticized are the politicians. And
so do you think that they're going to reelect the governor? Or I know he's running against other people that are trying to get the spot, I think.
Well, it depends. The governor's very popular downstate. Mm-hmm. He's, somewhat popular in the suburbs of Chicago. Michael Madigan
doesn't like the governor.
Doesn't like the governor. It depends on turnout, I guess, in the city of Chicago and in some of the suburbs.
Well, do you think another governor will be able to work with Michael Madigan? I mean, we had a Democratic governor before, and I don't know how well they worked together.
Yeah, we had Governor Blagojevich and Governor Quinn, and they had problems with Michael Madigan.
So I mean, becoming, getting a Democratic governor is not going to solve the problem. I mean, this Madigan, he needs it. We're talking about term limits. I mean, he's the ideal person to put term limits on. Yeah.
Well, the problem is, let's say Illinois collects $1 of revenue right now, and by the time you pay the pension obligations, Illinois' pension obligations, that's about 26 cents out of that dollar. And then we've borrowed so much money, the state of Illinois has accumulated so much debt. So the interest on that debt's another 5%. So already maybe 32 cents of that dollar is gone already. So you're working not on $1, you're working on 68 cents. And that's why you're not paying the vendors at all. There's several billions of dollars of money.
So we're going to go into junk bonds pretty soon? Is Moody,
well, they're seeing that Illinois is not paying its debts. Yes, and of course, we lost population in Illinois.
Right, so because they're going to other.
Well, the business climate isn't good in Illinois, so
people are going out of Illinois.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do?
Well, I think it goes back to we're in a critical situation, and maybe the Democrats are passionate about certain things and the Republicans are passionate about certain things, but your passions are not governing. We're not governing. The state is in dysfunction. So how can we compromise? Again, compromise, give something, They got to
read The Art of the Deal, right?
Whatever.
They need to work together, like LBJ worked and Reagan worked together and Clinton worked together. They just don't seem to know how to work together.
So Rauner's opposing tax increases, so maybe the Democrats will say, you know what, if Rauner says, give me term limits and I'll give you your tax increases. Okay, people are giving to. That's exactly what has to happen. If it doesn't happen, I think this crisis is going to continue. Our financing, it's going to be junk bond status, and the debt's going to increase, and Illinois will be a place that's not attracting business. They're not creating skills and dysfunction will continue.
And what John Cass said, maybe we need to divide what's going to happen to. I mean, did Detroit have a similar problem too? And they fixed theirs.
Well, then they went into receivership. Yeah. What happened was
we can't do that.
No, that's a different state. That's a different state law.
Thank you, Richard. I see.
We're done already.
I see that our.
Okay.
our program is almost coming to an end, and I want to invite you back because hopefully a lot of these things will be resolved pretty soon by, when is our election for the governor coming up?
It's next, the primary.